So I'm Connor, and this is Kevin.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for coming. You're all very welcome. Today we're going to talk about next generation retail marketing on Facebook and Instagram. So let's jump straight in. So Kevin, there's been a lot of negative press about the retail industry, and the term apocalypse is slightly overused. And a lot of retailers are, trying to keep pace with evolving consumer expectations. So, what does the retail advertising environment look like today? And, what are the biggest challenges retailers are trying to solve for?
Yeah, so I think, even outside of retail, I think advertisers more broadly are just trying to keep up with a world that's changing fast. And so what I mean by that is, digital connectivity has improved people's lives, but it has also raised everybody's expectations, right? Giving them endless amount of choice in the palm of their hands. And so from that perspective, I think one of the problems that retailers are trying to solve for is how do they reduce as much friction as possible in the shopping experience so that people can find what they want and then buy it immediately, which is now what they demand. And so what do I mean by friction? Things like a slow loading website, a non-intuitive user interface, right? Poor search functionality. Those things cause a ton of friction, lead to a lot of drop-off, and are just ultimately bad for your business, especially now with the shift in consumer behavior.
Very good. This is a big problem. This is $100 billion problem.
Right.
So how is Facebook trying to solve for this?
Yeah, so at Facebook, we're trying to think about it the same way. We are trying to reduce friction across the consumer journey. So from a pre-purchase perspective, Facebook is inherently a discovery platform. People come to discover the people that they care about, what they're doing, and they also come to discover the brands that they love. And so from that perspective, we are trying to not only find the people who will love their brand, but hyper-personalize that message, which is really the key here. And so instead of saying, well, Connor might love my brand, we are going to not only target you, but we will say, based on our algorithm, here's the shirt you're most likely to buy. By the way, what does that shirt look like for you?
It's going to be gingham, right?
Gingham, right.
Because Connor has no taste.
Connor has no taste. So we're not going to show Connor some plain white t-shirt, some whatever it is. We're going to show him the gingham shirt he loves. But we're also going to let him know where the closest store is to where he's standing at that moment and whether or not that's in stock. Like giving as much information up front as possible in the pre-purchase. From a purchase perspective, certainly if someone clicks on a product, you're going to want to go to that product. But I think the best example of reducing friction during the purchase cycle is actually Instagram checkout, where you can buy without ever leaving the app. And so to be clear, that's slowly being rolled out, so more to come. But the way that it works is the first time you check out, you'll have to fill out your billing information, your shipping information, your email address. And so naturally, you're filling it on your phone, so there'll be a little bit of drop off there. But the key is the first time that you check out, we will securely save that information for you so that the next time that you come back, it'll be pre-populated, one click, and you could buy it immediately. So it's definitely reducing a ton of friction in the purchase cycle. From a post-purchase perspective, we're talking about changes in consumer demand, right? And consumers demand rapid fulfillment. They demand regular status updates. They demand customer service. And I actually think Facebook Messenger plays really well there. So we've seen a fair amount of adoption from retailers to be able to continue the conversation, continue to build a relationship, and reduce friction even after the purchase.
Okay, very good. So for those retailers then that are, kind of keeping pace, what have you noticed is the biggest, change in social advertising strategy that's occurred over the past 12 months?
A couple. I would say starting with the more macro ones, there continues to be a shift from feed to stories. And what I mean is news feed to Facebook stories, Instagram stories, et cetera. And what I'll say there is it's not like people aren't in news feeds. Certainly they are. They're just spending more and more time in stories. And if that's where people are spending their time, then it's a good idea to advertise there. Great place creatively as well. So that's stories. I would say another trend is probably just continuing the growth of video on our platform, both from a consumer perspective and an advertiser perspective, just more and more video. But thinking that we're talking about retailers specifically, I would say the biggest shift for retailers specifically has probably been into store sales optimization, at least testing it, if not scaling it. And that makes sense because the large majority of sales still happen in physical stores for retailers, but we've been optimizing online for so long. And store sales optimization will allow you to understand who's converting in store and then ultimately find more people, giving you in-store incremental conversions.
Okay, and that's a big area of focus for us, and helping retailers actually target and measure for those in-store objectives. And we did a report in 2019 on the state of Facebook and Instagram, and in that report, a lot of the retailers that we interviewed mentioned that omni-channel tactics were an absolute necessity, and even went so far as to say that an omni-channel shopper is more valuable. But what do you think then is the biggest barrier to creating those frictionless experiences you spoke about?
The biggest barrier, I would say the most common is probably resources, right? So whether that's not having enough resources to implement the right tools, not having enough resources to run the particular campaigns, that's something that we come into from time to time. And honestly, I think that's where partners like Stitcher Ads are really helpful, because you guys not only understand how to set up and implement the right products, but you can also assist in the strategy, you can assist in the utilization of best practices. So I would say that's an important part too. So that's one. Other barriers, probably, I don't know if it's a barrier, but probably the online to offline personalization piece. And the reason I say that is because if we're talking about omni-channel personalization, the online part is, we're set, right? So retargeting's been around for a really long time. Everybody knows how to set it up, optimize, measure, et cetera. But then when you get to that online to offline personalization piece, I would say there's a little bit of confusion. I think that the tools are there, but there's still probably a little bit of confusion.
Very good. So, the adoption of all the Facebook suite of retail tools is essential. It's kind of just table stakes, essentially.
Right.
But, how can advertisers take these experiences a step further, and what are the ways that they can utilize these tools that they may not have considered yet?
Yeah, so in terms of the how for the personalization of in-store shopping, I would say that retailers are starting to do a better job shaping those experiences. And so one of them, I kind of hinted at a little bit earlier, I don't know if I called it out, but the local inventory feed. So with that, we're not only targeting people and saying, here's the product they're most likely to buy, but we're letting them know where the closest store is, whether or not it's in stock. You're gonna wanna make sure that they haven't bought it in the past already, right? So that's kind of one piece of it all. I would also say that retailers could be doing a better job with their ad creative. Not shocking, not just retail, I think anyone. And there's a lot of automated tools out there that can help you understand what creative works and what doesn't. And I think that is probably a good idea, because in the end, you can build authenticity through stories. You can create these incredible shopping experiences through instant experiences. But if you don't know what's actually working for your business, then it's not helping you over the long run. And so I know, like, dynamic creative with you guys is a good example of that as well.
Yeah, but that kind of brings me back to, proper setup, where you have to have the infrastructure, the underlying infrastructure in place to do all those things. So back in the last couple of years, we've been working with retailers to help them, unblock some of those issues around data, for example, right, to allow them to do those omni-channel campaigns. And we have bespoke technical integrations that we've had to do, because every retailer has their own custom requirements, and they have different ways that they organize their product data. Their local inventory data sits somewhere else, their CRM data sits somewhere, and then you've got UGC and all of these other data sources that need to be correctly structured to be able to power that personalization. And more recently then you talk about local inventory. So as we look at local inventory and how it can be used to drive that dynamic creative, we're moving to a world where now in an ad we are actually showing somebody what their nearest store is, and we're able to show the actual price, availability, and inventory level in that specific store, because that is a fundamental part of that omni-channel experience, is what they've come to expect, right, through their utilization of their mobile phone. We have some creative of what that looks like here. These slides will change. Anyone there? But as that's getting solved, then we can talk about some of the things that you can do with dynamic creative. So I mentioned being able to bring the local information from that store into the product. So we've got that local store location. You can see it coming up here, and the ad on the right hand side we have where we're able to not only have that product that's in stock at the price that it is. We're even able to bring the name of the store into the creative in that ad. We also then have user-generated content. So where a lot of you guys are working with influencers to generate that authentic content or unboxing videos or in-store experiences, we can take that information that is, that it's traditionally be used in your static campaigns, but if we can get that content into a feed, then we can actually use it to power dynamic creative. Another interesting way then that we're leveraging dynamic creative with our clients is the introduction of ratings, star ratings on product images, in the creative. And that comes with its own challenges because, we want to highlight the positively rated products, so we have the technology to help us solve where we're not highlighting poorly rated products. And lastly then, we can increase our ability to actually communicate the many purchase options that are available to the client. So it's, whether it's free shipping for something that's online only, it's BOPIS or buy online, pick up in store, or buy in store and have shipped, that we're able to include that creatively in the advert, so we're meeting their expectations for how they actually want to purchase across omni-channel. So the how is very important here, and we've got that set up. After that then, how have you seen retailers' measurement expand as they start to think more about that omni-channel in creative and as it becomes more of a priority for them?
So, first step is obviously making sure that you're capturing those conversions in store, and onto Facebook. There's a couple different ways you could do it. You could upload a CSV file, which is a little bit more manual. You could plug in directly through our offline conversions API, or you could work with a partner like Stitcher Ads to be able to do either one of those. Either way is encrypted and privacy safe for sure. But once the information's into Facebook, it really comes down to attribution. And what I'll say there is, post-click is not a great metric for online. It's definitely not a great metric for in-store. And the reason I say that is because more than 90% of retailer sales have no click beforehand, right? So if that's the only thing you're looking at, it's probably misleading. Not saying that you can't look at it, just saying if it's the only thing, it's probably misleading. So for the retailers that we're working with, a lot of them are thinking about other ways, like a multi-touch attribution, right? So running a statistical model to understand what's actually effective and what is not is something that's been more popular. If I had to pick the number one thing that the retailers that my teams have been working closest with, so some of the larger ones, they've really been focused on lift measurement, trying to understand the true incremental impact of their media via test and control. And so that's kind of the gold standard of measurement. And fortunately for Facebook, because we have real identity, we can separate people into a very clean test and control. Test sees the ad, control does not, and then you measure the difference between those two, branding or direct response.
Okay, very good. So this all sounds a little complicated. So, what are some interesting ways that you've seen advertisers then work with partners to expand on that retail offering and what you can do?
The partners, the partner ecosystem generally has been really helpful for us. It's allowed us to connect our retailers, our advertisers, to trusted and approved partners who we know can build upon what we already enable. And so we've named a couple of them already, like different ways that partners have worked together. But I think the one we haven't mentioned yet here, but we've talked about previously, is digital circulars, right? And so the context here is, I think most retailers at this point are building creative for mobile, hopefully for Facebook and Instagram, but at least for mobile. That being said, there's definitely some retailers who understandably say, hey, the circulars perform well for us, and so we have a certain amount of resources and we're putting them towards that, and therefore we might not be able to scale digitally. And I agree with part of it and not the other. Like, I understand the resource constraint, but there's an ideal state for creative, and then there's what you currently have. And with digital circulars, we can take your existing assets and still get really good results. I know you guys have done a fair amount of work with that as well, right?
We have, yeah. At the end of 2018, we started working with retailers to identify how we could leverage their existing creative assets to amplify their social campaigns. And an obvious place to look is at print. Particularly for those of you that are, publishing circulars or catalogs on a regular cadence, because we can leverage that creative again to build those digital experiences. And when we do that, once we match the the features of print in relation to store location, the price in that store, and the promotions or availability in that store, then we can look on and, well, okay, we've met the state of the art there. Now, what can we do digitally on top of that? And of course, that opens up a whole level of personalization where we can get specific on targeting, at least at the gender level. We can also just test and measure so much more quickly when it's digital rather than printing and distributing that print and measuring, and that test and learn cycle is just so much slower. And of course, in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, that digital impression is just a fraction of the cost of that print impression. And I just want to talk a little bit about Joanne. Is one of our most innovative clients, where they really, really have positively adopted this test and learn mentality and have a huge appetite to explore all that is new on Facebook and Instagram, whether that's from just looking at the minutiae and detail of best practice in how to run specific campaigns, to adopting and testing new ad formats, through to running cyclical incremental lift studies. They're a really, really progressive client in working with us and our Facebook team to explore all of these new features. And as you can see, it has furnished them with some excellent results. They've seen fantastic year-on-year growth in performance, both in their online and in their in-store sales. A clear articulation of their appetite to test has been embracing the digital circular. So what Joanne has managed to do is they've managed to reuse all of the creative and all of the data in their circulars digitally to create an evergreen, always-on digital circular campaign that is specifically optimized towards those in-store buyers, going back to SSO and some of the features that Kevin mentioned earlier on. And so they have this evergreen program where, as offers expire, new offers come in, and as we move from promotions or holiday seasonality, then we're refreshing that creative over and over again. An excellent example of the results that can be achieved when you move into that test and learn mentality. But we're midsummer now, and a lot of people are in the middle of those back to school campaigns. But before the big shopping season starts, what are some of the strategies and tactics that you think retailers should test?
So I would say, if you're not doing so already, test store traffic objective, store sales optimization, store visits optimization. But I think more broadly, I would just say, make sure you've got a test and learn plan, right? So with the advertisers that I work with, the retailers, at least my team works with, we have at least a full year-long learning agenda in place. So by the time we get to back to school, it's like, okay, well, we've got all these learnings, now let's apply them. And then we're testing again. So by the time we get to the holiday season, we have a year plus long of these learnings where we can really just have a massively big holiday season for our retailers, which is obviously so important for us as well. So long-term learning agenda, including some of the things we talked about today.
Yeah, and I think that long-term, that those learning agendas help kind of build momentum. And I think, a lot of that, what we're doing in those, we talk about these learning agendas is, it's really working closely with retailers to see how they can leverage their existing technology partners to release more data to fuel that personalization that we're talking about. And a couple of ways they do that would be maybe where if you're working with a recommendation partner to power recommendations, personalized recommendations on your site or your app, you can simply configure your Facebook pixel to push that data into Facebook, so you can then run, we thought you might also like campaigns that is leveraging that recommendation data.
I think we're timed out.
Well, we've got an extra minute or two. And then you've got loyalty, where you've got loyalty customers who have, are not engaged and expired, where you can create here's a segment of loyalty points at this level, here is a set of products that they can get for free with those loyalty points, and re-engage them in the lead up before holiday, so you're re-engaged with the brand. And then looking at things like localized bestsellers, where you've got the data to tell you that 8-seater patio sets sell really well in Texas, but don't do that well in downtown Manhattan. So just as we wrap up, there's a few, just a few key points that I want everybody to take away from the session. One is, as Kevin mentioned, reduce friction at every stage of the customer journey. So thinking about what the experience is outside the ads, but also being compatible with that in the ads. Secondly then is optimizing for that omni-channel customer and including your offline optimization in there and your in-store results. And again, using that to fuel the personalization that we've spoken about extensively. Then you've got to look at creative automation, both for video and for static, and feed those into those test and learn cycles so you're figuring out what resonates best with every segment of your customer base. And of course, the pitch for me is that as a partner, we can absolutely help you accelerate there because we know you all are internally resource constrained. It's a complicated landscape to traverse, and we're there to help you because we work with lots of retailers and lots of e-com clients, so we have the expertise to be able to do that. So thanks everybody. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for your time.
Thanks for the time.